All right.
Patrick Fiegl.
And Andreas Gioege.
Andreas.
So we came in a couple
Gentlemen,
here.
and thanks for your sponsorship.
You're very welcome. So, good afternoon. I think as we go into afternoon, we will plug into the previous conversations around transitions to S/4HANA and show the dimension of quality assurance, which is more than testing, as you shall learn. I'm here with my colleague Andreas Gioege. My name is Patick Fiegl. I led the co-development with SAP and responsible for integration of the Tricentis tool stack into the business transformation suite portfolio of SAP and bundling with additional assets such as content and services. But first, let's look at the reality today of Tricentis. So Andreas, please.
Great, thanks a lot. Andreas Gioege, I run the Alliance Architect team at Tricentis. I've been in the testing areas 28 years, so I'm dating myself a little bit here. But want to talk a little about this overall aspect about how can you achieve speed and accuracy in your end-to-end testing activities. Testing, it's formulated as a question here, it's still a pain for a lot of organizations. If you think about what are organizations doing today for testing? The most common tool used in organizations for, as part of their testing activities is, while we have thousands of customers, it's not Tricentis. Anybody has an idea? Well, there's really Excel. Excel is the most common tool, which is really tricky because it's not really any automation. Reusability is very limited, and it's all manual. So we see a lot of customers doing a lot of manual testing, which creates these slow deployments, these delays in getting to your time, staying on budget. And big point is really, even those who do automation, only 24% of test automation in average. That's pretty low. Probably even bigger issue is when you think about what is the risk for any change you're deploying. On average, we only see 25% of the risk being covered, which means 75% of your changes are basically, if they have a significant risk, are not getting tested. Okay, so this is the pain which we see in a lot of organizations. There's research, there's our own organization who basically seen this with a lot of our customers. But we now think about, is this really needed? We need to be clear, testing, quality assurance is needed. Why is it needed? Changes are happening. There was a lot of conversation yesterday, today about SAP transformation, moving to the cloud, private cloud, public cloud. There's a lot of changes happening. You might have changes to your business process, where you want to innovate. You want to change how you run your business. Lots of changes in technology. We're talking, okay, maybe we also need to go, adopt SuccessFactors, Concur, other type of business applications. These changes are creating a lot of risk, including when we now talk about compliance changes. There are a lot of compliance regulations organizations have to follow. These all require changes in your environment. But any change provides or creates a lot of risk. What if you break something? What needs to be tested? Which business process needs to be tested? Organizations create thousands of test cases. They still have a very small risk coverage. That's really what it comes down to. What are those critical business processes which are a must to be tested every time? If you cannot close your books, well, you certainly have a big issue. This is basically when we talk about, okay, testing is necessary. And that's why I think it's so essential for every organization, for all of you, to basically consider, okay, how can we do this in a better way? This is where Tricentis comes in. This is where we can help you, the entire breadth and depth of testing. We're not only talking about functional testing. We're not only talking manual testing, performance testing. We're talking about really starting from what is our testing scope? Where do we need to start? What should be tested? What is the impact of a specific change? Earlier there was a conversation about, I think Stefan had this point about, not everything is getting used today. something has not been used in the last 12 months. Do you really want to include this in your testing activities? No. Certainly not a good idea. So this is one of the aspects. Define your test scope. What should be tested? How do we test? This is aspect about, everybody thinks about UI testing. End-to-end business processes are going across multiple applications, particularly SAP and non-SAP applications. How do you test those end-to-end business processes? Maybe the other non-SAP applications are not part of your QA landscape. You don't even have this available, or you don't have the data available in those systems. So to really achieve high automation rate, you need to consider aspects like API testing, data testing. These different aspects are important. Yes, you also want to create test automation. You need to have the relevant test data. You want to do performance testing. And you want to then take all this information from your testing activities to take a decision. Are we ready for go live, yes or no? So those different aspects are important, and this is where Tricentis can help you. But we're not alone. I mean, I have this vest on, and it says on purpose, SAP and Tricentis. This is where we work closely together with SAP. One example is, for example, we are very tightly integrated with SAP Activate. Just a few weeks ago, we had a webinar with Jan Musel from the SAP Activate team, where we basically talk about, okay, how does Tricentis integrate there, and how does this specifically work? So when we think about those different steps as part of SAP Activate, when we think about, like, for example, S/4HANA functional upgrade, there are all these different steps from discovery, from preparation, all the way to running then your SAP application. One important point I want to bring up, it's not, well, let's go live with our project and we are done. Life's over. No, life's not over. Life's still going on. You know, the famous, my German heritage, you see here in my accent, it's like, there's this famous football saying, before the game is after the game. There's always the next game. There's always the next change. To build proper practice right now, to be ready for the next change. Don't only think about right now the S/4 transformation, think about the next step. What comes after that? What comes after the S/4 transformation? What comes with the next innovation? This next innovation might be a small little change. You still want to find out what has to be tested because of this specific change. So it's really this continuous cycle which we're talking about. So traditionally, testing was fairly late in every project. What's the problem with this? Every project, there are always delays. If you're late, testing gets squeezed. But testing typically takes up 40 to 50% of a typical project. It's a lot of time. So if you squeeze this, you basically increase the risk for you. So that's basically where we worked with SP, and specifically with the Activate team, and said, okay, we want to pull testing forward. Bring it over, really start earlier. And first of all, talk about this risk analysis. Again, what is the risk for this specific change? If it's a big change, like moving to S4, or if it's a small little change you're putting in place. What is the risk behind this? And then based on this risk, we can now define, okay, what are the systems which are under test? And by the way, across the end-to-end business process. We're not only talking about SAP. But this is where we now want to look at this end-to-end application landscape we potentially need to have. Maybe we need to use simulations of those applications which are not in place in your QA environment. You don't want to. You typically don't have all those applications in place. You want to create your test cases. You still manual test cases, your automated test cases. You want to execute these test cases and be ready for this continuous innovation and put this whole methodology in place. Follow Activate. That's basically just the guidance here. Follow Activate, and we are very tightly integrated there with Activate. So let's think about this life cycle. You've seen some of those slides before. There's LeanIX, where you can define your strategy, your architecture. There's Signavio, where you define your business process. What is the business process? You can design those business processes which you want to implement. And then you have SAP Cloud ALM. now basically go into this implementation and guide you through the different steps as part of deploying the specific solution. When you do this, we are basically part of this. That's the reason I said it's SAP and Tricentis together. We are part of this. Very tightly, we're working with SAP and are part of Cloud ALM. If you're using Cloud ALM, you already have access through a solution from Tricentis. Today, you have access to a solution. The Cloud ALM team outside, they can also tell you a lot of information about the Tricentis test automation solution, which is available as part of Cloud ALM. But this is when we talk about scope your tests. What needs to be tested? Test the right things. Analyze your risk. Then you create your test cases based on this risk, execute those test cases, get the results, and basically then be ready for the next cycle because it's an ongoing cycle. So this was just a bit of an idea about how you can leverage Tricentis, and we'll go into a bit more detail, to really guide you through this transformation project and being ready for the next project. Always saying it always goes on. With this, I want to hand over to Patick to take us to the next step.
Thank you, Andreas. So Andreas showed us how the necessary evil of testing, something that you wouldn't choose doing if you could do it otherwise, can be done in a very seamless and integrated way in the SAP context. This is state of affairs as we speak today, but now let's take a step back. We're enterprise architects here, right? And so enterprise architects look at things in a bigger context. Yeah? Activate is not everything, but there is a life before initiatives. There's a life of aligning business strategy to IT strategy. There is a life of people who have very little understanding for technology altogether and look at the results of the business. Of course, in the 21st century, the business relies on digitalization, so therefore there is always a look down from the business owner. Here he is, yep. Or here she is, looking down on the rest of the team saying, what can you do for me to be effective, right? So why should we consider this here? Because we already heard it, yeah? There is a notion that is linked to testing, and that is the notion of risk. There is the notion of quality assurance, right? Are we getting what we're asking for? Is the organization composed of the process owner, the solution architect, all the people supporting them to implement the solutions actually delivering what is being requested? And are they delivering it on time and within budget? Yeah. And this is why we are now starting to engage SAP, especially as the transformation suite has expanded with LeanIX, into the space on the left-hand side here, on that left-hand side here, sorry, to look at what can we do here to bring over the notions of risk management and quality assurance way before initiatives start. So where do we start? Again, as enterprise architects, we start with methodology, right? Methodology is a good word for us, not for everyone. But methodology is something that SAP has embraced in the form of enterprise architecture framework. Quick show of hands, who is familiar with the SAP enterprise architecture framework? Josh is, that's good. Yeah. Well, I would say probably 20% if I do an average count here. So this is something equivalent, if you would, to SAP Activate that has been around twice. For those who have gray hairs like myself, you might remember that back in 2007, there was a first enterprise architecture framework by SAP. At the time, it was SAP joining TOGAF and starting to really become conversant in things enterprise architecture. But fast forward into 2019, roughly, because at the time I was with SAP, relaunched the Enterprise Architecture Framework. And the big step forward was going from an academic approach to a very tool and content and ready-to-use based approach. And this is what the methodology does. Yeah? It gives you basically a metro map, a subway map, as you navigate the topics of strategy definition, business aspects in the business architecture, IT aspects in the IT architecture, and walks you through the creation of assets that will align the needs of business and IT and help you to plan your initiatives. In the end, it will all feed into the pipeline of implementations, right? So here's where Activate basically plugs in. Now, as I said, our focus is on where does quality come to show here, and there is quality. Yeah? It's not very prominent, but it is there, right? So what are we doing now? We are taking a look at the enterprise architecture artifacts. Those are the deliverables that are created during the different phases of the SAP Enterprise Architecture Framework's adoption, and are looking at where can we see touch points with assessing the risk level that I want to incur and the risk that I actually have, and deal with the mitigation that needs to be. So how does that look? Well, first, again, as enterprise architects, we expand the meta model, right? We create new entities that map into the enterprise architecture framework, those representing the risk, those representing mitigating measures, and those representing very specific assets that we link to in practice our test cases. And then we link it to the environment of the framework itself, so understanding that now we can look at risk in the context of a pure business risk, right? So let's talk about the pure business risk, right? I'm not from Germany, I'm from Austria. Yeah? So we don't do Pfannkuchen, but we do Palatschinken, which is pancakes, right? They're a little bit like the French pancakes. And the French pancakes have a testing component, right? Which is the minute before you pour in the batter into the pan, right? You sample it the first time because you want to make sure it's not too sticky, it's not too liquid, and you want to check it for taste. Now, if you only do that and you are not involved in the mixing process, it will be very hard for you to determine what actually went wrong. Was it the milk? Did you pick the wrong milk, the oat milk of your daughter, or did you use the fresh milk that you were supposed to use, right? Or was it that you picked, the right flour or not? It's very hard just by testing in an isolated way. Now, if you have a quality assurance cooking mindset, you were involved all along, and you can connect the dots. But now, the enterprise architect comes in, right, because there is not only did I execute the process in the right way, but should I be doing this in the first place, right? As an enterprise architect, you would be interested in, does the pan constitute a cooking hazard, right? Will the batter stick? Yeah? Will the palatschinken be glued to the pan, which is a bad result because there is no dessert for you, right? So this is where you go back to the question, should I even go and do pancakes today, right? Because maybe it's always happening. Or should I upfront include mitigating measures like introducing a little bit more of butter, et cetera, right? So you get my point. This is the perspective where we now take the risk into a bigger perspective and, to the point that was made early on, expand that quality assurance life cycle beyond initiatives into an overall quality assurance framework for the enterprise. Now, we have talked a lot about precision, if you think about the title of our presentation, speed and precision. But where does the speed come from, you would ask, right? Now, we have a very meticulous, very thought-through way of ensuring quality from the get-go, getting wonderful pancakes or S/4HANA transformations, very similar at the end of the day, I guess. Always goes nice with a good beverage together. Here we go and look at where we contribute to speed today. We look at our platform and we see the products that we sell via the SAP price list, the products focused on assessing where we should be testing, the products helping you to test wherever and as deep as you want. So all the user interfaces, all the programmatic interfaces, different landscapes, testing under load, testing in distributed environments like mobile interfaces, mobile environments, and so forth. And very importantly, closing the bracket, ensuring that the data came out right. Sometimes we forget that IT is about information. If the information is there but not accurate, not good, right? Again, bad palatschinken. So how does this translate to speed today? You would be surprised. Through Tricentis, companies are achieving massive acceleration. Yeah? Massive acceleration against what? Acceleration against the benchmark of using the methods that are typically in place. And to give you a little bit of practical flavor here, let's look at customers that actually have achieved those results. Quite impressive. Yeah? Gioege Energy, 48-month program to reduce a 4-tier landscape into one target new system, came out 7 months ahead of the scheduled S4 go live. 7 months ahead. Yeah? How did they do this? They slashed down their testing efforts in half, right? And now you're wondering, is this because the product is so fast and you can test so quickly, or what's going on here? This goes back to the whole thing about cooking. Yeah? Testing is part of a discipline of quality which involves people doing the right thing at the right time. Yeah? What we are is not a testing tool. We are how should I say? We are a dance orchestration platform. Yeah? We ensure that the enterprise architect and the solution architect and the solution configurator and the person who develops and so forth, right, are focused on the result, right? If you adopt a test-driven approach to implementation, you go with the goal in mind into the project, into the initiative, and then you deliver the result in a more aligned way. That's what we help to do at the end of the day, right? And so this is where the massive reduction comes out, because it is not the individual execution times. It is the overall improvement of the working model. Yeah? It's the overall improvement of aligning measures to the desired outcomes. Now, that's not all, right? So there is more in store for us. Again, here there is a future vision. If you remember what Stefan showed in the slot before us, those dimensions of extensibility, right? So he had the data, and he had the extensibility, and he had the integration, and so forth. As you look at the activities that companies will have to go through to transition towards the target landscape, you need to stand up a transformation environment. You need to migrate the components technically, right, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what we're doing here is even more dramatic, right? We're applying the superpress. Yeah? So the superpress, what is that going to deliver? It's a different analogy here than the pancake now, I guess. Making things flat seems to be on my mind. It is bundling together activities beyond testing, right? So to the point I was saying that we orchestrate the activities within execution. Now we look at these other steps that need to be done, like, for instance, code migration, and look for touch points that we have with regards to quality. If you have a code migration tool, there are vendors that we collaborate with and with whom we will provide bundles to customers like you. They are assessing where are changes that need to be brought over into new programming model that Stefan was talking about with BTP as site-by-site or in-app extensions. And with that, we can already determine testing scope on our side. So we can reduce a certain effort, the handover is more seamless, and it becomes bundled. But the biggest contribution that we will deliver, and stay tuned for that for the next enterprise architecture meeting, so come next year and then we'll see the results, will be really making this year very flat. The transformation testing will no longer just be a topic of having tools at your access, but it will be bundled with ready-to-use content. Yeah? Content that will be tied to SAP solution scenarios so that you have a head start to get through the entire itinerary. And with that, go and have some good lunch. And meet us at our booth. Thank you.
You guys mic me up? Oh, I am mic'd up. So, this is the first time this happens, sort of. We're going to take the flag photo in a minute. Couple things for you folks. So we're going to break to lunch shortly. And the people that encouraged the customers and that were on the third floor yesterday to go to the second floor for lunch today, and vice versa. So second, go to third. They're a little different experiences, but they're both great. And the sessions, so reminder again, reception this evening will be where we were last night, but different food, so a different theme. We have that going on. And the other thing I want to highlight, so there are 4 tracks this afternoon. And you got to remember, even though we have a lot of sessions, my presenters may hate me for this, but don't feel you have to go to all the sessions, right? Because conversations are great with different people that are here. And I'll highlight as well, and definitely the AI guys may hate me, but basically the AI stuff in this afternoon is in this room, but all the sessions this afternoon are being video recorded. So if there's something else that you prefer to is like your second choice in another area, know all the AI stuff will be recorded and we'll be getting all the sessions to you. So I just want you to keep that in mind. So last thing is, of course, the photo. Patrick?
All right.